We have a very active setup over the coming days with still multiple rounds to move across the south into Texas, across the southeast, and eventually head up into the East Coast and up into the Ohio Valley. We're looking at the latest update from the 500 millibar relative vorticity. We can see this powerful mid-level cyclone still out there in West Texas. That is going to be a slow moving storm, and that's the culprit of bringing pulses of energy across the south, bringing multiple rounds of severe storms. And all this gets reloaded as we head into tonight and going into tomorrow, especially for the southeast. And that will slingshot into the East Coast and up into the Ohio Valley as we head into Thursday, and then eventually forms into a heavy rainmaker going into the Northeast as we head into Friday. So here is the latest update from the Storm Prediction Center. We do actually have that enhanced risk down there into Central Texas. This is the region. We got some convective complex in the overnight hours highlighted across the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Some of those had some larger hailstones with it as well. Numerous severe thunderstorm warnings into the overnight hours. That air mass has stabilized a little bit. So we are going to have more storms that go across that region. Likely going to be some elevated supercells, likely some larger hail, but the more unstable air is still down there into Central Texas and especially into Southeast Texas, where we could have very intense thunderstorms heading into the overnight hours, into the wee hours of the morning, shifting into Central Texas, East Texas, and down there into the Houston Metroplex as we head into the overnight time frame. And then as we go into tomorrow, we do have that upgraded moderate risk for severe storms. Everything just gets reloaded. We've got this soupy air mass down there into the southeast. Some of those dew points are cranking at the low 70s, if not somewhere up into the middle 70s. That's very high for this time of year. Very high water content with these supercells. So the guidance does insinuate that we could see some strong tornadoes as we head into tomorrow, especially across Louisiana, back into Mississippi, as well as into Alabama. Also, very heavy rainfall as well. And then the damaging winds. We are going to be seeing these MCS complexes moving across that region, and those could send out some bow echoes at times. That could produce some damaging wind gusts of those 70, 80, maybe even some 90 mile per hour wind gusts is not out of the question. We actually saw that in West Virginia last week. We could have a similar type setup unfolding tomorrow as we head into the southeast. So if we put the overall radar depiction in motion over the next 48 hours, we can see where we stand, right? So here's where we stand right now. We've got the heavy rain. We got flood watches in place across this region into East Texas, back into northern Louisiana, into southern Arkansas, back into northern Mississippi. We do have that convective complex right now as we are right now on Tuesday morning. But here's the main system. It is still hanging out the west coast into the panhandle of Texas. And as we move across the daytime hours, going into the afternoon, we still see another convective complex that will start to reload across portions of Texas back into East Texas, while the main system is still highlighted over eastern portions of New Mexico, back into the Texas Panhandle, and then more convective complex as we go across that area that does have the flood watches in place across northern Mississippi, back into Alabama, and then areas into western Tennessee, and then lighter amounts as you head up into Kentucky. Then as we get into the afternoon, we are going to see another complex that comes across North Texas. That moves out with some banding moving into Arkansas, back into northern Louisiana. This would be around tonight, around 6 or 7 o'clock time frame. And then as we get into the evening time frame, look what happens, folks. Yes, we have another surge of energy as we approach the midnight hour back into Central Texas. And these are the ones that could reload and have an isolated tornado threat with them, some very damaging winds associated with them as well as we get into the wee hours of the morning. I mean, this is after midnight, folks. It could get really nasty down there into southeast Texas, back into the Houston Metroplex. Very heavy rain, likely have numerous warnings and watches in place as you go into the overnight hours. This is 4 o'clock in the morning. This is 4 o'clock in the morning, so it's going to be a bumpy ride. So if you live down there into East Texas, into Southeast Texas right now, and if you're watching this, definitely be on high alert, as this is going to be an overnight threat for you guys as we get into the wee hours of the morning. And as you wake up around 6 o'clock in the morning trying to get ready for work, there's just going to be a nasty squall line that's going to be highlighted over East Texas here, moving into Arkansas, moving into Louisiana, and then that's why we do have that upgraded risk for a moderate risk for all three modes of severe storms, because this is likely going to be transferring to a damaging wind threat going into Louisiana, back into Arkansas there, as that convective complex still continues to push off to the east. As we get into the heating of the afternoon, a lot more instability comes into play. It taps into some of those elevated dew points as well. And then we see that heavy rain just unload across this region with waves of energy. And then you get the backside of the system of the low pressure center actually moves right across the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Those are likely not severe. That would be about noontime on Wednesday. Very heavy rain coming back in the picture, and then all eyes will be trending out into the southeast, where we are going to have a widespread severe weather outbreak, unfortunately unfolding with tornadoes, damaging winds, and some very large hail with those supercells heading into Wednesday afternoon. Look at the setup as we head into about 4 o'clock on Wednesday. The entire state of Mississippi is pretty much covered with intense rainfall and very heavy rain in all three modes of severe storms. So this is going to be a nasty day for the southeast. So definitely be on high alert, have all the watches and warnings in place to get in your safe zone when they do issue those warnings, because it is going to be a bumpy ride, and that will continue into later in the afternoon, shifting into the Alabama region, heading up into western portions of Tennessee, while we have a back end secondary squall line with that main low pressure center still hanging out and finally trying to move out of Oklahoma and there in Texas, with just more rain moving across on the backside, as now the shift goes into areas into Alabama and eventually heading into Georgia. You have a secondary piece that shifts further north into Indiana, and eventually that's going to slingshot into Ohio there with renewed threat going into Thursday. So you can see it's a very active setup over the coming days with rounds of severe storms, and this all heads into the overnight time frame again, as it's now going to be highlighted over Georgia and much of the Atlanta region, heading into South Carolina, back into North Carolina, and that on the backside will have a renewed threat for severe storms as we head into Thursday across portions of the Ohio Valley. But here's the latest helicity tracks where we could see the potential greatest updrafts and where we could be seeing some of those strong tornadoes unfolding. So further north, we do have a little bit more stable air, right? But further south, that's the instability. That's where more unstable air. That's more likely where we're going to be seeing some of those larger hail and possible tornadoes down there into East Texas, into the Southeast Texas, but especially there into Louisiana and Mississippi, as well as into middle portions of Alabama. So, definitely be on a high alert, over the coming days, is because that continues to shift into areas into Alabama and eventually heading into Georgia as we get into the daytime on Thursday. But there's your flood risk, right? So we've got numerous flash flood watches in place for East Texas, across northern areas of Louisiana, back into Arkansas, into Mississippi, as well as into Alabama here. If you look at some of the rainfall totals, it's a lot, folks. This is just the next 48 hours. So we got a lot of heavy rain still to come, even in portions of Texas. They've already picked up some areas 3 to 4 inches. And that's in further east, you can see a lot more yellow starting to show up on the map. Some of these areas in East Texas have already picked up 3 or 4 inches. We still have a possible another 2 to 4 inches to come, but very intense rainfall as we could unload across into the southeast. We look at some of these numbers here. Yeah, 4 inches. This is just 48 hours, folks. But once you get into Alabama, back into areas into Alabama, into Georgia, some of these areas could pick up 8, 9, some areas possibly 10 inches of rainfall. So yeah, you get the idea, folks. This is going to be a nasty setup over the coming days with very heavy rainfall kind of still to come. And all this goes into Thursday. So all this shifts into more of a bimodal threat as we head across the eastern seaboard. We have a renewed threat, a slight risk for Florida Panhandle, back into Georgia, through the Carolinas, and up here to North Carolina. We are going to have a secondary piece of energy as the low pressure center will continue likely to split, intensify as it races northeast. We would bring a renewed threat to Kentucky, portions of Indiana, as well as into Ohio as we head into your Thursday. And if we can put the maps in motion here for that storm system on Thursday, look at the 990 millibar low pressure. That is another significant low pressure starting to come to fruition. And as this kind of winds up, see, it forms in 2 threats. You have the southern mode that will highlight across the eastern seaboard, and then we have the northern mode that winds up, still unloading across Illinois, eventually through Indiana, and heading into Ohio, now down to potentially 986 millibar low pressure. So that's another very intense system coming through the Ohio Valley with another renewed threat. And all this takes place and heads up the eastern seaboard with more heavy rain, as we get into the daytime on Friday. This is as you wake up on Friday morning. We could have more heavy rain highlighted across the eastern seaboard, a very intense 983 millibar low pressure. You can see the tight isobars really tighten it up. So these are also going to have more significant winds associated with them as this is trying to move out into the Great Lakes. And this all takes place and heads up into the northeast with some more heavy rainfall across the eastern seaboard, and eventually slingshot, and doesn't move out until sometime on Saturday. So I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button. I also have an app, so you can download that. I'll have it at the link in the description, but you can also go just to the Google Play Store as well as the Apple Store. Make sure you follow me on Facebook. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Also is my secondary channel as well, Pal Ponder Ultra. So I appreciate you guys watching. Catch me next update where I protect you before and after the storm.